The message was simple enough. Flight lands at 4:15 p.m. Can someone pick me up? I tapped send into the family group chat, watching the little gray bubble disappear into silence. The terminal around me hummed with life. Luggage wheels rattling over tiles, children squealing as they ran into waiting arms, the familiar crackle of announcements overhead. Yet, for me, there was only stillness. My phone stayed face up on my lap, screen glowing, no reply in sight. It wasn't the first time. The group chat was full of shared recipes, birthday wishes, prayer requests, and endless jokes that never seemed to run dry, until I spoke. Then came the quiet. A kind of silence that wasn't just absence, but rejection. I adjusted the cuff of my silk blouse, the navy one I'd chosen deliberately. Power dressing, even for family. The fabric was cool against my wrist. My nails freshly painted a pale pink that looked elegant under the terminal lights. From the outside, I probably looked composed, just another woman waiting for her ride. But inside, the sting of being invisible burned sharp and familiar. I glanced out the window at the plane I'd just stepped off, its silver body gleaming against the afternoon sky. I'd flown home carrying more than luggage. Secrets, successes, scars. And this silence, this deliberate, suffocating silence, was about to force me to decide whether I'd keep hiding or finally let them see me. I wasn't always this polished, this put together. There was a time I was just Anna, the middle child no one quite knew what to do with. Not the golden boy, Daniel, who carried our father's hopes of becoming a lawyer. Not sweet Emily, whose softness made everyone want to protect her. Me? I was the girl with big ideas that made my parents sigh and shake their heads. I still remember the night everything cracked. It was a Friday, spring of my senior year. I had just come home from an after-school art exhibit, still buzzing from the thrill of seeing my work displayed under bright gallery lights. I'd even been approached by a local professor who said I had potential, real potential, to study design. I'd carried that praise home like a treasure. At dinner, I told him, I think I want to apply for an arts program, maybe even in New York. The silence at that table was deafening. Forks scraped. My father's brow furrowed in disappointment. My mother pursed her lips as if I'd announced I wanted to join a circus. Art. Dad finally scoffed, setting down his glass. That's not a career, Anna. That's a hobby. Do you think we raised you for this nonsense? You'll end up waiting tables, broke and bitter. I felt my throat tighten, but I tried to steady my voice. It's not nonsense. Professor Myers said. Professor Myers isn't paying your bills. Mom cut in sharply. The tears stung before I could stop them. My hands shook under the table, fingers curling into fists. Across from me, Daniel smirked knowingly, while Emily stared down at her plate, too timid to speak. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on the floor of my room, shaking. My dream had been dismissed in a matter of minutes. I wanted so badly to scream, to make them see me. Instead, I pulled out the old leather journal my grandmother had given me before she passed. On the first page, she'd written in her neat, slanted handwriting, Anna, the world will not always clap for you. Sometimes you must clap for yourself until they finally hear. I traced those words with trembling fingers, the ink smudged from years of reading and rereading. And right there, I made a decision. If my family wouldn't believe in me, I'd believe in myself enough for all of us. A week later, I packed my bags for college in Chicago. Not New York, not yet, but far enough that their voices couldn't reach me every night. As the train pulled away, my chest ached with equal parts fear and relief. That was the night I stopped waiting for applause at the family table. Chicago was brutal at first. The wind cut sharper than any words my parents had ever thrown at me, and the city seemed to sneer at girls who arrived with secondhand suitcases and oversized dreams. My dorm was cramped, my part-time job at a coffee shop paid barely enough for books, and there were nights I cried into cheap ramen, wondering if my parents had been right. But then I'd open my grandmother's journal, the cracked leather soft beneath my palms, and read her words again. Clap for yourself until they hear. And I would keep going. I worked mornings behind the counter, afternoons in class, and nights sketching until my wrist ached. Some weekends, I volunteered at design fairs just for the chance to listen, to learn, to be near the people already living the life I wanted. That's where I met her, Marissa Caldwell. Marissa was everything I wasn't yet. Sharp, commanding, magnetic. She ran a small but respected design firm in the city. One afternoon, she lingered at my booth, flipping through my sketches. Her eyes lit with something I hadn't seen in years: recognition. "You've got raw talent," she said, sliding me her card. "Call me. I could use an intern who doesn't bore me." That card was my golden ticket. The internship turned into a mentorship. Marissa pushed me harder than anyone had before. "Don't you dare play small, Anna," she'd say, adjusting her red-framed glasses as she circled my drafts. "The world will shrink you if you let it. So you take up space." I learned discipline. I learned how to present my ideas with authority, how to endure criticism without flinching, how to walk into a boardroom with my chin up even if my knees shook underneath. There were failures, plenty. Clients who rejected my designs. Nights when deadlines crushed me. But there were victories too. My first approved project, the thrill of seeing something I'd imagined come to life. By the time I graduated, I wasn't the timid girl begging my family to see me. I was a woman with a portfolio strong enough to land clients on my own. Still, I stayed quiet online. My family followed me on social media, and while Daniel bragged about his internships and Emily posted about college sororities, I kept my updates vague. A filtered photo of coffee on my desk. A caption about working hard. Never the big wins. Because part of me wasn't ready. If they saw my success, would they finally clap? Or would they find a way to diminish that too? I wasn't sure I wanted to find out. Instead, I poured my energy into building. I took the risk of starting my own firm, just me, a rented office space, and a laptop that overheated if I pushed it too hard. Slowly, the clients came. First a local boutique, then a restaurant chain, then a corporate account I'd only dreamed of. One contract turned into another, and within 5 years, my firm wasn't just surviving. It was thriving. Somewhere along the way, I stopped needing their applause. But I never stopped remembering their silence. When my plane touched down that afternoon, and the family group chat remained painfully quiet, I knew better than to hope. Old habits die hard, but I wasn't the kind of woman who sat stranded. I ordered a black town car, slid into the leather seat, and let the driver whisk me away, not to my parents' house, but to the brownstone I now owned on the north side of Chicago. The silence in the car felt different than the silence in the group chat. This one was heavy with power, with choice. I could show them the woman I'd become, or I could keep living behind that invisible wall. 2 days later, the choice was made for me. My mother called. "Anna," she said, her tone flat, almost inconvenienced. "We're coming by. Sunday dinner. At your place." I almost laughed. At my place. They'd never stepped foot inside before. They thought I was still renting some modest apartment scraping by. But something in me snapped that day. I decided I wasn't shrinking anymore. When they arrived, I watched from the tall bay window as the family piled out of Dad's aging sedan. Daniel, still smug, in his tailored suit. Emily, nervous, clutching a casserole dish. My parents, stiff and guarded. I opened the door, calm, composed. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. Their eyes widened the moment they entered. The foyer gleamed with polished wood floors and a chandelier I'd chosen myself in Paris. On the walls hung framed pieces of my own artwork, bold, unapologetic designs that no longer asked for permission. "Anna," my mother whispered, her eyes darting around the room. "This is nice." Nice. Daniel let out a low whistle. "This place must cost a fortune." "It does," I answered simply, guiding them into the dining room. The table was set with crisp linen and elegant glassware, not borrowed or mismatched, but mine. In the corner, an abstract painting I'd purchased from a young artist I mentored caught Emily's eye. They sat, still stunned, as if waiting for the punchline. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "So, what exactly do you do?" His voice was cautious, like a man stepping onto thin ice. I let the silence stretch, savoring it. Then I met his gaze. I own Caldwell and Hayes Design, the firm downtown. Daniel's fork clattered against his plate. Wait, you're the Caldwell and Hayes? That's you? Yes, I said, my voice steady. I built it from the ground up. We handle contracts across the country. Last year, Forbes listed us among the top 10 firms to watch. The room fell into a stunned hush. My mother blinked rapidly, as if she couldn't compute. But you never told us. Would you have listened? I asked softly. No one answered. I stood then, crossing to the display cabinet near the wall. Inside, among awards and design trophies, sat my grandmother's journal, its leather cover worn, but cherished. I picked it up and placed it gently on the table. This, I said, tapping the faded ink, is what carried me through. Not your encouragement, not your belief, just these words and my own will. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Daniel looked away, shame creeping into his face. My father's jaw tightened, but even he couldn't deny what was right in front of him. For once, the silence wasn't suffocating. It was victory. I leaned back, folding my hands. Now you see me. The silence at my table lingered like incense, curling around each of them until they had no choice but to inhale it. For once, they couldn't talk over me. They couldn't dismiss me. I poured myself a glass of wine, slow and deliberate, before finally breaking the stillness. I know what you're thinking, I said, eyes moving from face to face. You're wondering why I never told you. Why I chose silence. Daniel shifted in his chair, defensive. You could have said something, Anna. We would have been proud. I gave him a look sharp enough to slice through his words.
No, Daniel.
You would have found a way to make it small. To tell me it wasn't enough, or that it wouldn't last. I learned a long time ago that pride isn't free. It comes with conditions in this family. Tonight, I'm setting mine. They stiffened. I leaned forward. If you want to be part of my life, here are the rules. Respect me. Respect what I've built. No more dismissive jokes. No more rolling eyes. You treat me like the woman I am, not the girl you decided I was at 17. My father bristled, opening his mouth, but I didn't let him interrupt. And you, Dad. If you ever want to sit at this table again, you will say the words you've avoided my whole life. I was wrong. His jaw locked, but I didn't flinch. Turning to Daniel, I softened, but only slightly. You've coasted on everyone else's applause. You want my help with connections? Earn it. Go finish that law degree instead of bragging about half-steps. Show me you can fight for something the way I did. Daniel's face reddened, shame spreading like heat under his collar. Finally, I looked at Emily, who had stayed quiet, her casserole untouched. My voice gentled. Emily, you've spent your life trying to keep the peace, but peace without truth is just silence. Stop hiding behind your timidity. If you want a relationship with me, speak up, even if it rattles them. Her lip trembled, and she nodded slowly, as if something in her finally cracked open. I leaned back, letting my words settle. I don't need you to clap for me anymore. But if you want a place in my life, you'll have to stand on your own feet. I won't carry the weight of your disbelief any longer. The chandelier light caught the rim of my glass as I raised it, a quiet toast to the woman I'd become. This isn't revenge. This is balance. You had your terms all those years. These are mine. Across the table, no one spoke. And for the first time, their silence wasn't rejection. It was surrender. The days that followed weren't a fairy tale transformation. My father didn't suddenly become warm and effusive, Daniel didn't turn humble overnight, and Emily didn't magically find her voice. But there were shifts, small, fragile, like the first cracks in winter ice. A week later, my father called. Not a text, not a family group chat message, an actual call. His words were halting, awkward, but real. I was wrong, Anna. About you. About everything. I closed my eyes, letting the moment soak in. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than I'd ever been given. Daniel emailed me his re-enrollment papers, almost sheepish, as if admitting he needed my approval. I didn't hand him connections. Not yet. But I told him I'd watch. For once, he didn't argue. Emily surprised me the most. She showed up at my office one afternoon, carrying coffee, her voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. "I want to learn from you," she said simply. And for the first time, I saw in her the same spark I'd once tried to guard in myself. At night, when the house was quiet, I found myself drawn to the journal in the cabinet. I'd open its worn leather cover, tracing my grandmother's faded handwriting like a prayer. "Clap for yourself until they finally hear." I smiled, because I realized something. I wasn't clapping for myself anymore. The world was clapping now. Clients, colleagues, even strangers who saw my work in glossy magazines. But more importantly, I didn't need the applause. I had become the kind of woman who carried her own rhythm, her own music. As I set the journal back in its place, the screen of my phone lit up on the counter. A new message in the family group chat. "Flight lands at 4:15 p.m. Can someone pick me up?" This time, it wasn't me. It was Daniel. And almost instantly, Emily replied, "I've got you." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The silence that used to wound me had shifted into something else entirely. Not absence, not rejection, but space I had carved for truth, respect, and growth. I slipped off my heels, feeling the hardwood cool beneath my feet, and whispered to the quiet room. Words meant as much for the girl I once was as for the woman I'd become. I don't wait for their silence anymore. I own it.